so surprised. I was like, "What do you mean, downer? Isn't it? It's great. Who wouldn't want to transform into like a giant orange monster and attack the city? What?"
I know MMA math doesn't make sense, and it doesn't, and you can't really apply it. But Volk beat Max 3 times.
Dude's first match is against a Venezuelan wrestler who literally beat him maybe a month or two ago at Pan Am's. So that's like a terrible first round for him. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pins and Punches podcast. I am Tanner McHugh, joined as always by my great co-host, Josh Derrick. The podcast where we talk about everything wrestling, not just UFC, MMA, movie-related, and everything in between. Josh, how are you doing, my man?
Wonderful, wonderful. It's Contender Series is over, but gives me something to look forward to in 46 weeks.
How you doing, man? Are you going to be all right for 46 weeks?
Well, my Tuesdays are now going to be spent either hitting the sack early, my little rest day, or just another day where I can watch some movies.
Or you could start watching some Conference USA football, dude.
Ooh,
football Tuesdays.
Yeah.
some of those games. Dude, I'm upset. It used to be MAC football like on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, which is like the history behind that's crazy. ESPN came to some big conferences and was like, "Hey, do you guys want to play on some Tuesdays and Wednesdays?" And they're like, "No way, that will never work." So they went to the MAC to do it, and they said, "Let's try it." And it turned out to be amazing because, I mean, I'm not that diehard in it. Obviously, I live in Ohio, so I was kind of into some MAC schools like I think it's Bowling Green or Boiling Green. I don't know. My wife makes fun of me because I always mess it up. Or even Ohio University, Toledo, yada, yada. But for those diehard football fans are like, oh, great. There can be football every day of the week now. I think I saw something. It's not until like December maybe where there's not football on TV, which is wild. But this is a good example of that everything in between area of the podcast. But
yeah.
So let's talk about our boy Pitchman, who unfortunately lost. But how do you think he did? I guess overall for the last episode of Contender Series.
So it was another split decision, and if you're going to a split decision, it usually, man, unless the judges really messed up, a split decision means you didn't get your ass kicked. I mean, you did well enough that one guy thought that you won the fight. So he performed well. I scored it for the other guy. I did think that the other guy, Louis Garuli, won the fight.
I will say I did see most of the fight.
Okay.
I did see most of it. And yeah, I just think, Pitchman was a little, he definitely lost in my opinion, just from like a eyeball test of it, if you want to call it that, but continue.
Well, and the other guy, he did really well in the wrestling exchanges, which was the most surprising part. You figure
he was a former wrestler too, right?
Yeah. I think they said he wasn't D1. I can't remember what division it was, but he did surprisingly well in all areas of the fight. But yeah, it was we wanted to see the Pitchman take it, but he might get some fights in a regional organization or some other organization, and maybe we'll see him next season.
Yeah, I think he just needs a little bit more time. I mean, it's not like he graduated college last year or even like this year. But I think he just needs more time. Some of these people have so many fights before they even get their shot. So I think he'll be all right. But all I keep seeing, and just from my perspective, he just needs to work on his striking, which someone who doesn't have the background, I feel like the lightweights might struggle with that the most, even if they are a little longer. But that might just be another eyeball test thing for me, I guess.
Yeah, and the only real standouts from the Contender Series last episode were the first fight and the last fight. The first fight was awesome. You had Australian dude Jonathan McAuliffe. He got yeah.
Sorry,
he got cheesy, but he got a triangle choke, and it was one of those. I love seeing this happen. It was one of those where he has to tell the ref that the guy's unconscious. And then the ref gives the arm a little lift, sees that it's limp, and then waves the fight off.
I think I saw this actually. I think I saw that. Yeah,
that was the first fight, and then the last fight, that was the real showstopper. And I couldn't have asked for a better way to end the season than a dude who was 5-1 at the time, taking the main spot on the final episode of the Contender Series for the season on 8 days' notice and coming out and getting a rear naked choke in 37 seconds.
What?
It was incredible.
How do you even do that? That's crazy.
I
He
mean,
just
he
went
he
right
came
out
out
and
blitzing, jumped on the
Yeah.
choke immediately, and even he didn't have the hooks in.
Bro.
Like his legs were the hooks were not in, but he had the choke, and it even looked like that, like he was losing the grip a little bit. But sure enough, tighten that up, and just a few seconds later, the guy was tapping. It was just one of those spectacular things that you love to see, especially a guy who wasn't supposed to be on the card. He took the fight on 8 days' notice, and he came out and punched his ticket to the UFC in less than a minute. You always love to see stuff like that.
Yeah. I guess besides what was actually fought or seen, you know us here, TrueTan Wrestling and on Pins and Punches, you and me, we love storylines. Was there any fun like storylines coming in like that you kind of learned that night? Or I mean,
So
obviously you can't top a German model from Dagestan, so but anything you kind of learned?
So one of the cooler storylines was there was this girl, Julieta Martinez. She is from Argentina and currently trains at the UFC PI in Mexico. And UFC former champion Dominic Cruz is one of her coaches.
Oh, that's cool.
And she came in, she's only 20 years old. So she's super young, super short, super small for the division. She fought at uh what was it? I believe straw weight. I can't remember exactly
But
but
she's
regardless,
small,
she's
yeah.
undersized for the division. She was really short, and she was fighting a girl much bigger than her in terms of like stature, and she had a little bit of a slow start, but the latter half of the first round and the second and third rounds were really impressive, and she ended up winning the fight. And she was the only person on the card that didn't get signed to a contract. But what Dana said was that she looks incredible and that they do want her in the UFC, but that he would be doing a disservice signing her this early. Because at only 20 years old, I mean, she is 8-0 currently. So she does have 8 fights, which is a lot for a 20-year-old.
Mhm.
So he's saying get some more fights in, keep training at the PI with Dominic Cruz. I mean, if Dominic Cruz is taking an interest in you, you have to have some potential. You know, if a former champion's taking you under his wing like that. So while she didn't get the contract on this episode, she's somebody that we're likely going to see down the road, maybe even next season, but likely maybe the year after when she's really in prime, top level competition form. But she really impressed, and that was one of the cooler storylines that I saw coming in.
Wow,
Having
dude.
somebody on the Contender Series that young.
Yeah, she does look pretty young and like short compared to who she fought. Yeah, that's crazy. I guess you don't really see that. Even like guys like a Bo Nickel or other wrestlers, they normally take some time. Well, heck, like after college, you're not 20 if you do 4 years and then red shirts on top of that. Like so 20, yeah, super young. Would have been cool to see her get signed, but I think it's maybe for the best that she kind
Yeah.
of just gets some more experience and kind of sounds like she'll get her chance. So does Dana White talk like before every like after every fight or something? Like how does that exactly work?
So at the end of the episode, they all sit down and they're all like in a row. And Laura Sanko interviews Dana, and he goes fighter by fighter, starting with the first guy all the way to the last. And it's immediately like normally the guy who just won the last fight. Normally they sometimes aren't even sat down by the time they get to him.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like immediately after. And he'll go through what he thought of the fight and whether they get the contract or not. And then, they have the camera on that fighter. So you're catching their live reaction. And sometimes he'll try to keep you on the edge of your seat, but I mean, sometimes you just know they're getting signed. Like, for
Yeah.
example, Nick Klein, when you get a rear naked choke in 37 seconds, you're going to get the contract. So sometimes it's not really much of a surprise, but sometimes, especially if it went to a decision, you're kind of on the edge of your seat. You're like, man, is this guy going to get signed? Like, did it impress enough? And normally, I watch every episode, every single Contender Series fight. So I have a pretty good idea of like, okay, yeah, that guy's probably going to get signed or that guy probably isn't. But yeah, that's how they go through, and he'll give his thoughts, and then they get the opportunity to get interviewed again by Laura Sanko. So they get an interview after they win the fight, and then they get an interview if they get a
Okay.
contract.
Yeah, that's what I was because obviously from watching UFC cards, not really Contender Series. Normally the winner yeah, normally even the loser gets interviewed after each fight sometimes, or the winner definitely, the loser sometimes does as well, depending on who it is. So I was just curious because you always mention what Dana said, and I was like, does this dude do a press conference after? Is
He
it like
does
a
also
quote
do
from
a
a
press conference.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I'm always tuned into them. They're usually like 20-30 minutes. So yeah,
That's
but
how, I
I
mean,
watch
that's
them the
worth
next
it.
day.
What
Oh
is it?
yeah.
Normally 5 fights. I mean, I
Yep.
feel like 30 minutes is short to kind of talk about all of it when you're at that level, but I get it. I get
Yeah, and
it.
no, and normally like the post contender series press conference, they're also asking him like non contender series questions, like what's going on with the upcoming cards. Um, but speaking of upcoming cards, UFC
Yes.
308 is Saturday,
Dude, it's
and
ki-
what's up?
I'll let you go ahead in a second, but dude, it's kind of wild. Like we talked about this on podcast 1, and that kind of feels like a while ago,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew the dates from podcast 1 to now weren't that far apart, like less than a month. So when I looked this up and I was like, "Oh yeah, we talked about this." I was like, "Wow, that feels so long ago," but I knew it was
Yeah.
going to be here so quick. But
Yep.
go ahead. I mean, I'm excited for this. There's a lot of goose eggs up for grab on this card,
Yes.
plus the main. Oh man. But yeah, what are you excited about?
So the first fight, now I don't know if they're going to reshuffle the order or not, but when I'm looking at the schedule here, the first fight we had a guy pull out. So it was
I see
originally
that.
supposed to be Renat Fakhretdinov versus Nursultan Ruzaboyev. I think I mentioned that on one of the episodes before that I was excited for that fight.
Mhm.
Well, Ruzaboyev had to pull out. He's now fighting a guy named Carlos Leal or Leal. Maybe it's Leo Leal. Not sure. I've never heard of him. Doesn't even have a picture on Google. So he might be making his debut. I'm not sure. But all I
Oh
know is Renat
boy.
Fakhretdinov is an absolute mauler. He kills people. He fought, I don't think this, it might have been his last fight, but I can't remember. But the one fight that sticks out in my mind was when he fought, the Motown Phenom. Uh,
Motown Phenom?
yeah, I can't,
Yo.
what was it? I can't even think of his name. I didn't watch him in his heyday, so I can't. I remember his nickname. I cannot. Is it Lee? Is his last name Lee? Is it
Sure, man.
what? I apologize, dude. I did not watch you in your heyday. That was before my time. But all I know is my only memory of this dude is him getting choked unconscious by Renat Fakhretdinov.
Okay.
That's all I could remember. So
Man, this dude's the start of the night on the not even like on the prelims. 21.
mhm.
Wow, yeah, he does. This is gonna be a killer card. And the are the prelims still just free on ESPN or
Yep.
ESPN Plus if you have the account?
Yep.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to know for this weekend for me.
So yeah, and then we had Farid Basharat. He's one of those undefeated guys at 12-0, fighting Victor Hugo at bantamweight. The Basharat brothers, they're on an absolute tear in the UFC. They're looking really good. I
Is
think
the other one undefeated?
he was. I think he just lost his first fight. I believe. Yeah, I think he lost his undefeated record, but. Those two are always fun to watch, and especially with Farid still being undefeated, you always like to see if somebody's going to keep that zero. And then the fight after that, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. Now, Chris Barnett, he's a fan favorite. He hasn't fought in a while, but he's a big boy. And what
He
he's
looks
famous
fun,
for,
dude. Both
yeah,
these dudes just look like incredible, like just fun guys.
Chris Barnett might be the biggest in terms of like what do you call it? Horizontal. He might be the horizontally biggest fighter on the
Like
entire
this, we're
roster.
saying,
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah. But he delivered a head kick and then got the knockout with the
that's hard to
ground and
do when you're
pound.
that size.
Yeah,
That's
and then
hard
did
to
a
do.
and then did a flip and then like
What?
landed on his ass, but still like landed the flip on his ass, given like it was just such a sight. So he is one of those fan favorites. Everybody's excited to see him back in the octagon.
Dude, all I'm
Um,
saying is I'm gonna beat you on this one. All I'm saying is Barnett wins. Put him up against Aspinall, dude. Can do flips, kicks. I mean that just sounds like a great way to promote an Aspinall fight. Just
if they ever made Chris Barnett versus Tom Aspinall, that would feed families. That would just that would be.
Oh
I want to see
man.
it. I want to see it. Somebody call Dana up. We need to see that fight.
Oh boy.
But
Hopefully he
then
wins first.
that one of the more interesting fights on the prelims is Mateusz Rebecki versus I can't say his first name. Last name Oralbai. This
Yeah.
guy is like the reincarnation of Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan, however you say it. I mean, he just the aura that this guy has, he looks like he is about to run into your village and just tear the whole place apart. He is undefeated in the UFC so far, and
What
he's
what's his
what's
one
that?
loss from his like country league or whatever where
Yeah,
he
yeah,
fought?
it would have been pre UFC.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, so we're excited to see him back. Jeff Neal versus Rafael Dos Anjos is on the prelims, which is two pretty high key. I mean, you could say maybe, I mean, past their prime, but still pretty big names on the prelims. It just goes to show how stacked this card is.
Is
From
Raphael from that group of fighters we talked about last episode? From Brazil? I can't remember.
He is from Brazil.
Okay.
You're the fighting nerds. No,
Fighting nerds.
yeah,
I knew it
no,
was something like not, it doesn't sound like it sounds dorky, but it also doesn't. Like it
yeah,
sounds cool dorky. But I
yeah,
couldn't
no.
remember what it was.
He's not on here, or he's not on. He's not with the fighting nerds.
Yeah.
Although the following, or no, that's I
Ibu
think two.
Aslan's the next one.
Yeah, he was. I
He's
can't.
he's fighting someone who doesn't have a picture either, but they're 11-0.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the undefeated guy. He
Oh
might be another.
wow.
Normally, if they don't have a picture, they're normally making their debut with the
Yeah.
promotion. So
That
yeah,
leads
no,
into the main card, 13-1, 11-0. There must be something there. There's got to be something there, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and the last fight on the prelims is it's called the feature prelim. They usually reserve that spot for a fight that are going to make people want to tune in and then want to continue watching and buy the main
Yeah.
card.
So
So
this
that
is starts at 10 a.m., correct?
yes starts at
Where
10
is
a.m.
this being
Abu
held?
Dhabi.
Oh, yes, dude. I
Yeah,
love when cards are in different countries where like it starts at a reasonable
yeah,
time. All right.
yeah. I'm
It's
not staying up
raising. The
till.
stock for me trying to watch this is raising. It's getting up there, man. That's big.
And then we talked about the opening fight on the main card before Sharapudin Bullet Magomedov versus
Yep.
Armin Petrosian.
14-0.
Yep. So, a lot of people are going to write off Armin Petrosian because he's fighting an undefeated rising prospect, but it's one of those fights that I think could really go either way. And it's going to be, I think it's a great fight to start the card because it's a really exciting matchup right off the bat. Then you have Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Lerone Murphy, undefeated. Dan Ige, he really, I mean, he's been in the UFC for a while, but what really brought him a lot of recent hype was that he fought Diego Lopez, who is one of the biggest rising stars. He actually is weighed in as the backup fighter for the title fight. So
Hmm.
if Max Holloway or Ilya Taporia pull out,
Oh,
Lopez is in
they do this?
only for championships or main events.
Oh, okay.
So
Makes
yeah,
sense.
not every fight has a backup fighter, but like if it's like a high
Yeah.
profile title fight and they need to save the card, and that's one of those things where it'll still sell. If either of those guys like have to pull out for whatever reason, and Diego Lopez has to step in, it'll be less. You'd have to imagine, but he's a star. Like he is a rising star, and I mean, he's just on an absolute tear. I'd like to see him fight Volkanovski. In a perfect world, we have whoever wins this title fight, and then Volk fights Diego Lopez, and the winner of that gets the next title shot. That's what I'd like to see.
Do you think that's like realistic or
I think so. Yeah,
okay?
I think that is probably the most likely path, but you never really know. But that's out of every possible scenario, that is what I would like to see.
Okay.
And I really don't have a dog in the fight for the main event. I mean, Max Holloway, absolute fan favorite, delivered on the BMF title fight. I would absolutely love to see him become the champ again. But on the other hand, I love the look of an undefeated champion. I think Ilya Taporia has what it takes to be a star. And if he, I won't be disappointed to see him defend his belt and hopefully after that start a really cool title reign. I mean, he's already beat the consensus greatest featherweight of all time in Volk, knocked him out. So if he beats really the other guy who has his name in that conversation, I mean, he did lose to Volk 3 times, but those are like his only real high
Hmm.
profile losses in the UFC. So, it's just a main event that you could geek about for hours. I absolutely love everything about it. But Dan Ige, back to him, he got a lot of recent hype because he stepped in to fight Diego Lopez on, I think, 3 hours notice.
Oh
I
wow.
think, I believe it was, I know it was that same day. It
So he
was like a
probably
few
doesn't
hours.
cut much weight, or he
Yeah, no,
just, or there was rumors before, is my only guess.
I heard that he got the call like a few hours before the fight was happening and saying, "Do you want to fight tonight?" And he was able to pull it off. And so
Wow.
here's what
Dude,
I'm
they
not.
should keep him in the UFC till he wants to be done. Like that's the
And
kind of shit like you're
you're
like,
right.
I don't care if you lose 10 in a row, you're staying.
You're right. And those are the kind of moves that you make in
Yeah,
order to
dude.
solidify that kind of position. Here's what I don't like. While he is on the main card of a major pay-per-view, he's fighting an undefeated prospect. What I would have liked to see is to have Dan Ige give him a fight, not necessarily that he'd be the favorite in, but maybe something a little less, like maybe something a little bit more geared
Make
towards.
the odds a little closer because I'm sure
Right,
the
right.
odds aren't really in his favor.
Right, yeah, I haven't checked the odds on the fight, but you have to imagine that the undefeated Lerone Murphy is a pretty substantial favorite. So, not the biggest fan of the matchup, but I like to see him on the main card of a major pay per view. So that's also cool. And then after that, we have what I imagine is the title eliminator at light heavyweight. You have to imagine that the winner between Magomed Ankalaev, I think we talked about this before too, and Alexander Rakic, whoever wins that is going to be fighting Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight belt next. I think Magomed Ankalaev really got the royal shaft in terms of what happened to him with the belt. Fought to a draw with Polish Power. Oh man, give me the initials.
Polish JB.
Jan Blachowicz. that's
Yeah.
that's rough. That's bad on my part. I can't.
That's all right.
I gotta remember
I've
that.
seen this dude before, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
First loss on Izzy's record.
Yeah, that's
Izzy
definitely
fought
where I
him.
that's definitely where I know him from then.
But yeah, so
Yeah, I was
fought to.
stunned by that actually, now that I'm really thinking about it. I didn't realize that was him.
Yep, Izzy bumped up to light heavyweight and lost to zero because of it.
Wow.
But yeah, so Magomed Ankalaev fought Jan Blachowicz to a draw. It was a title fight, but it was a draw. So, and it was a vacant belt, so nobody won the belt. I thought he won.
Hmm.
But then I thought Magomed won.
That's
But
lame they did. That's such a lame way
right,
to do that, bro.
yeah,
You
I
can't pick
agree.
somebody.
And then he has the fight end in a no contest with Johnny Walker, because
Yeah, I do see his records pretty wonky. 19-1-1-1. That's pretty
his
wonky.
only loss is wacky, is wackier than even anything else. His only loss is to Paul Craig, who submitted him with 1 second left in the fifth round.
Bro. Oh,
If it
he
wasn't
got
the
cragged.
fifth round, it was the third round. I can't remember if it was a. You have to imagine it was a main event, but regardless, it was the last second of the fight, and
Wow.
Paul Craig threw up a triangle and got him to tap with 1 second left. So that is
Oh,
his only loss. So it's a real heartbreaker.
wow.
But then Magomed gets the rematch with Johnny Walker, knocks him out. So now, you want to see him fight for the title. I think he deserves to. Not saying he's going to beat Pereira. I don't think you. I mean, anything could happen. Puncher's chance, but
Can't beat
I
the
think
GOAT,
Pereira
dude.
wins that fight.
That's just simple
But
math.
yeah, but he
I'm just
deserves a
kidding.
title shot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, MMA math they say never works.
yeah.
But
Yeah. I've learned
but
that.
but at the same time, if Alexander Rakic beats him, I think that'll be an interesting matchup for Pereira. So I'm excited to see whoever wins that. But now the co-main event, son of a bitch.
Oh, here we
This
go.
this is where it's at. We got Robert the Reaper Whitaker versus Hamzat Bors Shamayev. So now what I saw an Instagram post about this one. It's like we get this fight, and then we have Ilya and Max after it. It's just
Yeah,
a
dude,
perfect
it's
scenario.
truly a special card, bro. Like
Right.
how normally great cards have great prelims that lead into great main cards, so it's really great to see it all come together. But this one is really just when there's fans like me that are kind of like tiptoeing the line of like knowing some people, not really knowing like 10% of the field. When it brings people like me in, then it's a really good
Mm,
card, in my opinion, when even more
yeah.
of the general population comes in. So, but yeah, let's hear all about our co-main from you.
So Robert Whitaker had that. It was a heartbreaking loss to Dricus du Plessis, the current middleweight champion. Nobody, I mean, very few people thought that Dricus had a shot in that fight, but he ended up knocking Robert Whitaker out. So after that, Robert Whitaker comes back, gets a win over a rising prospect in Ikram Alaskarov, a Russian dude.
These names, bro.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
So now he's getting this fight where it's like, okay, this is what I believe is another title eliminator at middleweight. I think, well, actually, I believe Sean Strickland is getting the rematch against Dricus. So I think Sean Strickland is going to be fighting for the middleweight belt next. So whoever wins that fight between Dricus and Sean Strickland, I think is going to fight the winner of Whitaker and Chimaev. Now, Chimaev was burning through people early in his career. And then when he fought the more top level competition, namely Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, you know, they took him into waters that you haven't really seen him being taken into before. I believe both of them. I know Usman went to a decision. He didn't finish Usman. I forget, but I don't think he finished. I don't think he finished Gilbert Burns either. But regardless, he's still winning these fights, but it wasn't these complete shutouts that he was pitching early in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I think, is going to be his absolute toughest test yet. I think Robert Whitaker is a bigger challenge than Usman and Gilbert Burns. So if Chimaev ends up beating him, I don't think there's anybody else left for him to prove himself against other than whoever is holding the belt. At the same time, Robert Whitaker, if he wins this fight, and I mean, the majority of people want to see him win this fight. If he wins and Dricus beats Sean Strickland and is still the champ, that rematch is going to have a lot behind it because, again, everybody was writing Dricus du Plessis off in that fight. So to get this rematch where it's like, okay, now is Rob going to capture what we all thought he was going to do the first time, or is it going to be a repeat performance? I would love to see Rob win this fight, and I would love to see him get that title shot against Dricus. But even if it's against Strickland, I think that's a cool matchup too. So middleweight is really hot right now, and this fight is just really the absolute best thing that the division can have right now. All barring if Chimaev actually fights, because he's known for some either pullouts or some antics that result in some shuffling.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, so we're all crossing our fingers and hoping that everybody makes it to the fight and we're all good to go, because this is one that the fans really deserve and everybody's just super hyped for.
Dude, this is what I love about UFC. They just do such a good, like, in some wrestling events or even some fights, it's very like black and white. Like, if this dude wins, or excuse me, it's not very black or white, I guess. If this dude wins, yeah, he's still great. We don't know what's going to happen. If this dude wins, like, yeah, he'll probably jump up a few rings, things like that. But then there comes fights like this, most title fights and co-mains, where if Chimaev wins, there's like A and B that could possibly happen, and either one of those is awesome. And then if Whitaker wins, A or B could happen, and all of those are incredible. So I just love how the UFC can do that, even though like that's someone wrestling struggles with the bracket system, which just basically kind of is in a weird kind of like a fixed bracket where if this person wins, we can set this up, things like that. But it's hard to promote, but still there's all this backstory and storyline. It's like some people want this person to win just so they can see this fight. And if they lose, that might never happen, or it might. And I just think the UFC does such an incredible job. Like, I don't really care, I guess, who wins, because it sounds like either scenario is going to be awesome. But I don't know. I gotta go with Whitaker, man. Just based off this dude looks like a bad dude. He looks like he can mess some people up. Looks like he has messed some people up. Actually,
oh, he certainly has. Yeah, I mean, he's a former champion. You know, he is. I mean, even when Izzy was on his massive title reign, the consensus was that Robert Whitaker is the best middleweight in the world that isn't named Israel Adesanya. You know, he was that guy that was, I mean, because Izzy beat him for the belt. So he is that guy right below Izzy. And it's just that dream matchup. I mean, it's a dream card. I mean, everything. I mean, having an undefeated champion going up against a fan favorite, a guy who's coming off of an incredible KO victory in the BMF championship against Justin Gaethje. One thing that I wanted to point out was that Max Holloway, he's been in the UFC for a very long time.
I was gonna say, out of everyone on this card, almost he like I guess on paper has like almost the worst record of the whole main card. That's how incredible it is. But I mean, records don't really matter when you just put yourself up against people, and he's only lost to some greats. But it's
I mean, yeah,
crazy
three
that
of those losses are Volk.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's crazy that Holloway has 7 losses and only one other person has more than that. Like that
Yeah.
just shows how crazy this freaking card is. But sorry, go ahead.
One thing that can't go understated, and Max brought this up himself, is that while he's been in the UFC for so long, I think he got signed at like 20 or 22. He was in his early 20s when he got signed to the UFC.
Long time.
He's only 32 years old. You know, he's not like, he's been around so long that you think he's like way older, but he's only 32. I mean, he's only 5 years older than Ilia Topuria.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really, he's not that old. He is at the age where a lot of fighters enter their prime. Now, normally the heavier fight, this is featherweight. Normally, you know, a heavyweight enters their prime at 32, like in their early 30s, like Tom Aspinall. But I think he might be I don't know his exact, I know he's in his early 30s. He might be like 31 or something like that. But regardless, that's normally when those heavier weights enter their prime. So Max Holloway, you know, you might have some newer fans maybe thinking that he's older than he actually is. But it's just going to be such an incredible fight because you have Ilia, who has just mowed through everyone, and then you have Max, who is an all-time great, and it's just, again, a dream matchup. This entire card is like a MMA fan's dream. I love everything about it. I'm so excited for it. I am, like you said, I'm excited that it's at 10 in the morning. That means afterwards I could watch some movies, just make the whole day really great. It's yeah, I'm super excited.
Who do you got, man? Who are you picking?
In the main event?
Yeah.
I was worried you were gonna ask that. I'm going with Ilia. I'm going with Ilia Topuria.
I'll take Holloway.
All right,
for bragging rights, I guess.
I respect it. You know, it's one of those things where I love Max, and especially after the BMF belt. I mean, he, like Dana White said, like he sells oh shit moments, and that was like the pinnacle of oh shit moments. And it's what you watch MMA for, is for fights like the fight between Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. That's why you watch the sport, especially for the ending. And again, I would absolutely love to see Max get the belt back, become champion again. I will not be disappointed whatsoever. But I've watched, I believe, every single fight. I think I watched Ilia's UFC debut and watched every one of his fights since then in the UFC. I mean, he just mows through people like a lawnmower. And against full, I mean, once you knock out Alexander Volkanovski, I mean, I know MMA math doesn't make sense, and it does, and you know, you can't really apply it, but Volk beat Max 3 times, and Ilia knocked out Volk. So it's like, I just have a hard time going against Ilia. I mean, I've seen what he knocks people out with such like viciousness that I cannot go against him, no matter who he's up against. So I in terms of picks, I have Ilia, but I would love to see either of them win. Like I said, love to see an undefeated champion keep that title reign, keep that 0, and I would love to see an absolute legend get that belt back after all these years.
Yeah, another thing in wrestling and UFC that's just great. When you have two people you really like, and you might have a little preference over another, but at the end of the day, we just want great matches, great fights, really. And I have a lot of that. Like, obviously, I root for Penn State, Lehigh, pretty heavy, but there's just sometimes I don't really know whoever wins. I don't really care as long as it's a great match. I have a lot of those matches that I watch, so I get it. But Topuria is a killer. Holloway, I mean, yeah, like you said, a great dude. And I didn't realize he was that young, but's been around that long. He's kind of ahead of the longevity game, because I feel like we're going to see that more and more where people are watching this at a young age, so they're starting to train a little sooner than some of these greats that they watched. So they're starting younger, so then their careers are longer, so we're seeing them longer. But yeah, Holloway obviously isn't a part of that generation, so he's kind of ahead of a lot of people right now with the longevity game. But I feel like we'll see more and more people kind of last as long as him. But could be wrong too. Injuries are real, so
yeah. I don't know if he changed anything, but I heard before that he does not spar.
Huh.
which will save you a
So,
lot of
so he just basically
damage.
does like the development side of it, like training,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
different drills like that. Huh.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I don't know if something changed. Maybe I'm misremembering something or I heard something wrong, but I believe I heard that that is like the key to his longevity is that he just doesn't spar.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah,
That's interesting to me because when I hear sparring, I think get like real world reps, but you're not going to get hurt. Like that's basically the whole point of both the fighters is like we're going to give really good reps here, but no one should get hurt at the end of it. But
yeah,
maybe just over time, your body. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
I know that with wrestling, like spar and no one really gets hurt, but just it is a long time to just be training that. So I get it rather than just doing drills and getting better. So clearly, I guess it's working for him.
yeah.
Yeah. UFC 308, go watch it, everybody. I know Josh will watch the full thing. I'm going to have to do what we kind of joked about last week and kind of be on my phone here or there, but also want to be involved in the Halloween festivities. I'll be around with my young niece and wife and everything. So, um, but watch UFC 308. It's amazing. Going to be amazing. So, Josh, you got any final notes on it before I move to U23s?
No, I think we covered up everything pretty well. I'm just all that talk about it just has me even more excited.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty stoked, honestly, about it too. Uh yeah, they just don't get cards like that. But we could talk about it all day. It's not even just the main fight, but all of it. But um only thing I really got to say about U23s is I'll kind of preference the event. So kind of how freestyle Greco women's wrestling works. Obviously, there's the Olympics, but then on non-Olympic years, there's the World Championships for all 10 weight classes that are represented across the world. But then they also break it down by age level. So cadets, which is now U17. So anyone 17 or under competes at the World Championships. So that's kind of where you see like big prospects and when kids are starting to get recruited, things like that. Then there's what they call juniors or U20. So everyone under 20. So normally like that 18 to 20 range. So you get some redshirt freshmen, true freshmen in college, and then this year we had a really heavy high school team. So we're going to have a good team for a while. And we won U20s, which really rare to do when there's 18-year-olds going up against 20-year-olds. In college, 2 years doesn't make a huge difference, but I mean, just think about when you were 18 and then when you were 20, there's just a huge growth there, let alone like in combat sports. Then there's seniors, which is basically no age gap. For example, Marcus Blaze, he took bronze at U20s and was a U17 champ a year ago when he was 17. He competed at the senior Olympic trials. He almost made the senior team. So, for example, there's real no age. Like you could compete however old you want to be, and it goes all the way up. Like Marcus Blaze, 18 years old, could have been on a team with 34-year-old Jordan Burroughs. So that just goes to show what that is. And then the event I'm talking about is U23. So this kind of got implemented in between like the juniors to senior range if you still wanted to compete at a different age class. So there's anyone 23 years or under. Men's freestyle will start here in a couple days. Women's is going to start tomorrow. Again, we're recording this on Tuesday, so women's will be concluding almost when this airs. But big news and big storylines, which we love here. USA Greco, which isn't normally the best. USA is not really that great in Greco-Roman, which is all upper body, a lot of cool throws, a lot of hand fighting technique like that. You can use your legs, you can use your legs, you just can't touch legs. So that's why USA fans don't really like it because USA is very heavy on attack the legs. You see that in UFC all the time. And we're just not that great at Greco right now. They get a lot of hate, but I don't think it's really that deserved. I mean, yeah, the results aren't there yet, but they have some incredible moments every year, just not as much as the freestyle yet. However, I believe we got one of our first, if not the first, U23 Greco medals just today on Tuesday. We got a silver medalist. Almost won, lost 4-3 in the finals. I'd say the Iranian that beat him was pretty controlled. However, the story gets deeper. So this dude's name is Becca Melishvili. Now, when you hear that, do you think like American name?
No,
Yeah, that's
sounds Georgian.
nailed it. Nailed
Oh,
it. Yes, exactly. So in international wrestling, there's these things called transfers. Now, you don't really think of that. We kind of talked about before where like USA has a couple guys that wrestle for like San Marino, Puerto Rico, things like that. Each country has different criteria. You can only transfer once in your whole international career. So normally not a lot of people transfer into America. Normally it's like Cubans that are getting out of their country and come to America. So they're actually just American citizens. So that's kind of a different transfer, or like the French refugees from Russia example, like they're actually moving there. Where there's examples where dudes are training in the United States and they compete for other countries. So we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing a lot of people who train in Russia, which is another super deep country in wrestling, and then they're transferring to other countries. Like, for example, I believe Albania had 2 medalists at the Olympics, both originally from Russia, not Albanian. So they were like 3rd or 2nd on the depth chart. Russia couldn't go to the Olympics, so I think they had 2 bronze medalists. I think so. Uzbekistan Olympic medalist was 2nd on the depth chart in Russia, things like that. So Russia and America are big for it. But this guy is from Georgia. So I instantly looked him up, looked up his story. And I was like, wow, like, also to preference this, other countries are a lot better at Greco than the United States. The United States pours a lot of resources into freestyle. A lot of other countries are kind of rooted still in what the sport was originally founded, like Greco-Roman, like like all that. So a lot of them are still really good at it, like Azerbaijan, Iran, things like that. But they're also good at freestyle. So we're just trying to find those pieces here in the States and everything. So I started looking this dude up. He's from Georgia, did really good. Not totally sure why he transferred yet, but obviously it's great for us right now. I mean, who knows? We have a lot of great Greco prospects coming up, have a lot of U17, U20 medalists coming up. But yeah, this dude gave America a medal. I was pretty hyped watching him. Because it's just fun. Like for freestyle, you can watch the whole tournament and there's going to be guys going deep. Greco, not so much. But again, there is storylines like this guy. And this, in my opinion, his run. So here's something else that you probably don't know. Sometimes where you get placed in the bracket is huge, like in any tournament. But for world championships, if you lose to someone who doesn't make the finals, you're just done. So normally with brackets, there's like an 0-2, like you wrestle 2 matches minimum. And if you go 0-2, then you're done. However, if you don't lose to the guy who makes the finals, you're just done. However, if someone you lose to makes the finals, it's basically follow the leader style, and then you wrestle everyone else he beat to decide who gets bronze. So there's 2 bronze medals and then a gold and a silver. So it's a little weird bracket system. But anyway, the dude's first match is against a Venezuelan wrestler who literally beat him maybe a month or 2 ago at Pan Am's. So that's like a terrible first round draw. Not expecting much. Comes out and wins 9-0, which 8 points is a tech in Greco. So huge win there. Beats a Russian 12-7. Russia, very good at Greco. Beats a Georgian, which is crazy because maybe he left for political reasons. Georgia is starting to see a lot of guys transfer out that can't start. So I don't know why he picked America because, again, we're not the best at Greco, but clearly beat a Georgia guy who might have beat him before in his own country. So that was huge for him. Then he beats the 2 seed 3-3, winning on criteria over an Azerbaijan guy. And then unfortunately loses to Iran. But Melishvili, I mean, he's going to be a threat on the Greco scene for us. And I'm excited because, again, U23 is really hard to medal at. It's no senior worlds, but doing what he did and the run he did. Because sometimes, you, like I said, you could be put on a side of a bracket that's much easier than the other side. And all you got to do is make the finals. If you make the semis, you're at least guaranteed to at least fight for a medal. Because obviously you're going to lose to someone who makes the finals there. So it was pretty incredible to see this dude do what he did and kind of just sparked an energy that I think USA needed for Greco. And excited to watch the women compete. They have a star-studded cast. USA men's has a lot of good guys, and excited to talk about it next week. But yeah, I just wanted to keep it all Melishvili for today, man, because he pumped me up for USA Greco.
How many matches will the champion fight, or I guess wrestle, in U23? Like from beginning to end, how many is that going to be?
So it depends. This guy had they call it qualifying, or you call it a rat tail. So like before the 16-man bracket. So basically they don't have enough to make a 32-man bracket. So it's like matches to get into it. So he had one of those. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he had 5 matches. So the Iranian dude who won it won 5 matches,
Mm,
where he won 4 and lost 1. But for example, like some brackets, like U17s, like those brackets might have been a little smaller. So some dudes might only had to win 3. The Olympics, it's only 16 brackets, so you only have to win 3 to make the finals, things like that. It really
mm,
depends. Like sometimes the way these brackets fall, you really don't have to do much. I will say year before the Olympics, because if you place top 5 at Worlds, you automatically qualify your country, which is a big deal for the Olympics.
mm,
Those brackets are massive. Like if you win less than 5 and make the finals, it's probably pretty rare. Like
mm.
something crazy happened in your bracket. Um, so yeah, right around 5. And U23s are shaping out to be pretty big this year, which sometimes they're hit or miss, but looking like it's going to be exciting because sometimes you get like those U20 champions that come up, like, which is if you're a U20 champion, you're really good. You can compete on the senior level. So you get them. Sometimes you get guys who place at the Olympics that come that are still under 23. So you get some incredible brackets at this tournament too. And I don't think it gets a lot of hype compared to other world championships, but there's some awesome matches throughout.
How many matches can somebody realistically do in one day, do you think?
Oh man, so they implemented a rule right before I got to college where it was 6 minimum at a tournament, essentially. But dude, there were some opens where dudes lost round 1 and then had like 10 matches if they wanted to take third. So I've seen dudes wrestle 11 matches, win 10 of them. Yeah,
That sounds absolutely grueling.
it's wild. Like obviously, and it's the same with I guess it's not the same because you get punched. But like say you lose round 1 to the dude who wins it and it's a close match. So that's 7 minutes grinding, obviously, on your body. But then say you pin like 8 of the 10 dudes like pretty quickly. That's not too much on your body, but then again, that doesn't always happen just because you
Right.
wrestle all the way back. You could have, I mean, that's over an hour of wrestling if they
Yeah.
go the distance. So uh, I don't I don't think it's healthy to do 10. I think you're going to be beat up. It's not like you're going to be able to wrestle the next day, maybe, to your full effect. But that's a good question, dude. I kind of want to do a study on that now, but
Yeah.
I'll back burner that for a little bit. Oh, dude. But sweet, man. No, pumped about U23s. Next week we'll have some more results from the women's and men's. But let's rapid fire through some of the movies you've been watching on your 31 day. Dude, you're almost done. Man,
Yep.
Contender Series ended, the movie challenge ended. I mean, let me know if you need anything, man. I want to make sure mental health's gonna be all right.
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling.
But yeah, rapid fire, and then right before we get to our guest movie, I got a surprise for you, dude, that we
Ah,
could talk a little
yes.
bit about.
Yes.
So won't
Perfect.
forget about that. But fire away, dude.
So to start the week, I wasn't able to watch as many movies as I was the previous 2 weeks
Uh-oh.
because I went to Pittsburgh this weekend.
Oh, you had
Got
fun again? Two
yeah.
games in one year, dude. That's awesome. And they
Yes.
killed I
Oh
forget
yeah.
who they played, but
The
they killed
Jets.
them. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it was
That's a good
such an
win.
awesome game. Yeah, great, awesome game to go to. Was had awesome seats. It was some of the best seats I've had. It was like right in that sweet spot where you're not too low, like right by the sideline where you can't really see everything, but you
Yeah.
were like right above it where you could still see the whole field, but like you're still in like that lower section. It
Oh,
was some
that's
of the best
awesome.
seats I've ever had.
Did
I
Russell look
absolutely loved
good?
it. Yeah,
Russell
he
started,
did.
right? That's
Yes.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it
I
was
mean,
just
you
a
know,
bad fit at the
yeah.
Broncos.
Yeah, you know, he wasn't like lighting the world on fire, but he made plays that I don't see Justin making. So it was
Yeah.
like, okay, like we could work with this, you know. It's yeah, it was really cool. So because of that, wasn't able to watch any movies Saturday or Sunday, but to start this out, I went and saw Terrifier 3 again in theaters. So
Oh, no
I
way.
was well that doesn't count towards the challenge. I still that movie only counts once, but it's worth a mention that it was good enough that I went and saw it in theaters twice.
Was there
One
anything in that movie that like when you rewatched it like the second time that you were looking for because you know it was gonna pop back up later?
It was mostly like a lot of the I tried to really tune into the dialogue more. I mean, not that I wasn't the first time, but it was like anytime you watch a film for the second time, you're going
Yeah.
to hear something you missed. So, was trying to really tune into the dialogue, was trying to, you know, lock in for the gore sequences when I knew they were coming. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember this part. Like, this is going to be good." So, it was one of those movies I'm glad I watched it twice.
Yeah.
One of four films that I have seen in theaters twice now. So
Oh,
it's
nice.
added to quite a prestigious list. But yeah, then after that, watched The Facility from 2012. It was a Tribeca Film Festival film. It was about as middle of the road as they come. It wasn't horrible, but it was by no means a good movie. It felt like, I mean, it was like a pharmaceutical trial horror movie,
Huh.
which on paper, that sounds like a really cool idea, and the idea itself was cool, and that I think was the strong suit of the film. But other than that, it wasn't a film that I'm like eager to watch again. It didn't really blow my mind, but for what it's worth, for a festival film, it was the effects were pretty good. But yeah, it did its job. Nothing
Yeah.
special, but yeah. Then after that, watched Death Game from
Death
1977.
Game. All right.
Yeah, a little bit of a misleading title. It's not a slasher, it's not a gore film, but the idea itself is super disturbing. And it's one of those films that starts out with a quote. And I love films that start with quotes. There's just something about a quote that really kicks off a film. And it really put the idea in perspective of how disturbing it actually is. Without giving away too much, it's two girls kind of like act like they need help and kind of hijack this guy's house and
Huh.
put him through a bunch of mental torture. Um,
Poor guy.
I don't know if you've heard of the film Knock Knock. I think it was directed by Eli Roth. It had Anna De Armas in it.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, it's
Dude,
from
every
20.
year, like someone mentions an Eli Roth movie from years ago, and I'm like, where'd
Yeah,
this dude even make that? Like, when? Like, how did I
right.
miss this?
Yeah, the first Anna De Armas film that I saw her in was what was it? Knives Out. So that was where I was
Oh,
introduced to
okay.
her. I forget
Oh,
what year that was.
cool.
Was that 19? I
It
think.
was, I think so. And then they started making the next ones like right after COVID, like you could
Yeah,
get back on film
The
sets.
Glass Onion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so Knock Knock from 2015 is a remake of Death Game from 77. It's
Oh,
like it's
cool.
it's literally like a direct remake. So much so that I know he's on it. I think he is featured in the commentary of the film. I don't I know he's on the bonus features. I don't know if it's just an interview or if he does the commentary, but I know Eli Roth is like on the Death Game Blu-ray and the special features somewhere.
Oh,
Shout out
cool.
Grindhouse Releasing. They have some of the best boutique
Shout
Blu-rays
out
on the market.
Grindhouse.
Shout out Grindhouse. They are one of the best. Then after that, followed it up with an absolute bona fide classic in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Um,
Yeah, all right. I like it.
and yeah, funny enough, first time I've watched that film in its entirety.
Oh, really?
Yeah, owned it for years. I have the Walmart pop art edition, the slipcover.
Dude, those
Got
were
that.
so cool.
Yeah,
I
I
have a
love them.
couple. Yes, those were so cool. I forgot about those.
Yeah. Yeah. So finally got that one. Really enjoyed it. And what I thought about that film in particular was that, I watch a lot of horror films from the late 50s, early 60s. Now, this film's 1960. So it's like right in the middle of that.
Mm.
And you can see why it cemented itself in history because it's so different.
Yeah, I was
It
about to
does
say
so
it's
many
so
things
different than that
different.
era. That's all you
Right.
hear.
Right. And it's one of those films where if you're trying to get somebody in to horror of that era, it's a perfect introduction. And I think, after Janet Leigh gets killed, it's like a totally like I mean, it has to do with it, but it feels like a separate film. Like it almost feels like two different movies once she gets killed because you spend so much time getting invested with her in the beginning and then you just get this curveball of her just getting murdered in the shower in that iconic scene. So yeah, it was great to finally watch that film in its entirety.
Yeah, that's
And then
well, I got the big twist of that movie, her getting murdered, spoiled for me way, way, way before I
yeah,
saw it.
yeah,
But I was more obviously I was just a fan of that era and watching it and seeing like a big root for slashers to come. But what I really liked like watching it when she got killed, I was like, all right, this is what's interesting me now. What do they do for the rest of the movie?
right.
'Cause all you hear is main character dies right away, main character dies right away, and then I'm like, so what's the rest of the movie then? Like what
Yeah,
happens?
yeah.
And yeah, that's what I think it made me like it more that I knew the twist, but
Mhm.
who knows if I wouldn't have known it back then, but whatever.
Yeah, that's a hard spoiler to avoid. I mean, this scene
Oh,
itself is so iconic that
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
up
a
there
hard
with
one to
like
avoid.
Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Like it's just hard to not know it.
Yeah, so I got to watch that with a couple of friends too. They enjoyed
Oh,
it. So,
fun.
it's always that's always a fun time. And then the film after that was The 11th Commandment. I know I mentioned that in
Oh, wait, yeah,
episode
yeah, yeah.
1. Yeah. Didn't get to watch that on the 11th. I watched it on the 18th, but did
Close
get around
enough.
to it. Yeah. Did get around to it. It was a slasher with like a theological twist. You have a guy he's like a Bible nut, and he gets put in a mental institution, and then breaks out. He kills like one of the nurses, breaks out, and then he goes to exact revenge on his uncle that put him in there. And it has like a theological twist to it. Like it touches on themes of religious fanaticism and divine retribution, like things like that. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward slasher.
Yeah.
And, good, not great. It's one of those. It's not like a slasher that I'm like, that was like top tier slasher, but it also wasn't dog shit. And a lot of slashers could be dog shit.
Yeah.
So it was really middle of the road, but still an enjoyable film. And then after that, and we'll touch upon this one a little bit more. After that, we had Kill Them and Eat Them from
Yeah.
2003. Directed by Conall Pendergast, the guy who directed a film previously mentioned on this podcast, Flesh Freaks. And we're going to talk a lot more about that movie in just a little bit. But before that, you have a surprise.
Yes, I do have a surprise, and we'll introduce our guest after this in a second. He's really awesome, has a great story. I have one thing to talk about with him before we introduce him and everything. But yes, my surprise, dude, I had to hold my tongue for a second just a couple minutes ago. But today, I got out of the theater 2 hours before we sat down and started chatting. I saw Terrifier 3.
Hey,
Yeah,
awesome.
dude. So we could talk about it here for a little bit. I'm still
Yeah.
digesting. You know how it is right after, but dude, one thing that I thought about throughout the whole thing, and looks aren't everything with movies. We know that, everyone knows that. Just because it looks good doesn't mean it's great. But I watched the first and second one again weeks like a week or two before I saw this third one. But it blows my mind to just everyone should look at Terrifier 3 and just know, like, when someone makes a low budget movie, it doesn't mean they're a bad director, bad writer, bad any of this. It just shows they don't have the money quite yet to do what they really want to do. But what I'm getting at is it's incredible to see how the first one looks, then how the second one looks, and then how the third one looks. And
Yes.
the amount of money that was put into it, which isn't a lot compared to some of these huge blockbusters, but they all just, each one just looks better. The story gets more complex, but in a good way. Like, because it's not, it's the same thing basically over and over again, but it always increases the ante with it, but in a good way. It never kind of tips over. The third one, if you watch the first one and then the third one, you're gonna be like, wow, this was a lot more.
Yeah.
But if you watch the first, second, third all right in a row, it's such a good build up. They all look like they just keep looking better, and the story just keeps getting more interesting to me, actually. So
Yeah.
I thought it was really awesome. I hate to keep saying they just keep getting better because you don't normally say that with horror. Normally it's like the first one's the best. It's hard to beat. But yeah, I was just kind of blown away from a gratuitous standpoint and just a filmmaking standpoint, I guess.
Did you have a favorite kill?
Man, I'm still thinking about it. I feel like there was a lot of like skin removal stuff.
Yeah.
Which shit. I'm not too sure yet. The rat one, which is a cop out, that, or the mice or rat going down her throat,
Yeah.
was pretty gnarly. I thought during, I'm like, man, they're doing a Pennywinks, which is like a South Park like reference, except it's the other way around. South Park fans will know what I'm talking about. But, that one, the shower scene was brutal. Literally going into that, I was like, man, it'd be cool to see him use a chainsaw. The not hydrogen peroxide, the frozen
liquid nitrogen.
I kind of like that just because of how excited he got making it and then getting to use it. So I thought that was pretty good. And then the opening scene was just chilling. Like there were some
Yeah.
chilling scenes in this series, but this one definitely was a lot more horror comedy, I thought at
Oh
points.
yeah, certainly. It was
But
hilarious.
the opening scene was like probably the most chilling scene out of any of the whole series,
I
I
agree.
thought, which I thought was kind of a breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Because like you have how chilling that scene is, and then you have him cleaning the plate after he eats the cookies. So
yeah,
like
dude.
you get that injection of comedy right after this
Yeah.
brutal scene.
Dude, the little girl getting caught too, like kind of broke my heart. Like,
Yeah.
and then I was like, dude, if that's breaking my heart, I got a long ways to go. Like in this
Yeah.
movie, I can only imagine what's coming.
Yeah, I mean, when it starts out on the kids, you're like, no,
Yeah,
you're
dude.
you're thinking
Yeah.
like there's, and while they don't show, well, I don't want to spoil anything major for the opening scene. If anybody's watching this and wants to go see it,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's just everything about that opening scene, like you said, I thought they executed it so well in terms of making it that chilling. Like the whole opening is so chilling, and then right near the end you have like that injection of comedy to really set the tone. Like you're gonna have this brutality, but at
Yes.
the end it's
Oh
hilarious,
yeah. Dude, they
and
really I was watching parts of the first one before I left. And I was like, man, Art was like comic relief in the first one, but he also was like a lot more pissed off.
yeah.
And I was like, he's there. They cranked that up a lot. Like how, like he just loved, like he was on a mission to have fun killing these
Yeah,
people. Is what I kind of took it as.
I love how the silent laugh has become as iconic as him. Like
Oh,
that's his
I
thing.
know, dude, it's so good. I love when he does like the shit. I like when he does the with his mouth. I think
Yeah.
that's like because a lot of people say he's more like a mime, so I like when they
Yeah,
do that too.
yeah. I also like the little nod at the end where the woman's reading the book, which is the title of the first film that Art was in, The Ninth Circle. I haven't
Oh,
seen it.
dude, I was like trying to connect it because I was like, that book has to mean something. And then I was like, maybe it's just like a religious thing, like just to bring it all.
Mm.
But sweet. Yeah, so you want to talk about not Flesh Freaks, why am I blanking? Not
Uh, Kill them
something
and eat
mean.
them.
Kill them and eat them. I was like,
Yeah.
I can't think. All right, but yeah, want to talk about kill them and eat them, and then we'll introduce our guest.
Yeah, so Kill Them and Eat Them, much like Flesh Freaks, was a shot on video film. And I just found out what that was after I watched Flesh Freaks because you could tell there's something different about it. Like it
Yeah, dude, I
doesn't,
didn't know that was a thing either.
like the movies that you and I would make back in the day, they were shot on video.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
weren't shooting on film, like
Mhm.
like film negatives,
Yeah.
and that's what makes the difference. And it has its own distinct style. It seems more like rough around the edges, and I think that it kind of adds like such a unique layer. Like when you're watching a feature length shot on video movie, it's a totally different ball game. And Kill Them and Eat Them was put out 3 years after, but it looked a lot better in terms of the quality of the image. Even though it is still shot on video, it did look a lot better, and the setting and everything, where it all took place, the idea behind it. There were even some like really funny moments in it. Like they have this obscure power entity called the company, which like it's just it's goofy and it's hilarious. And it was one of those movies where it was on the bonus features of Flesh Freaks. So you have the Flesh Freaks Blu-ray. It's not advertised. I mean, it is on the back, like it tells you, but it wasn't advertised when I bought it. It was just Flesh Freaks. And then I pop it in and I see bonus feature, Kill Them and Eat Them. I'm like, oh, what the hell? There's a whole other movie on here. And when I got to watch that, um, it kind of like it was like my next shot on video. I'm gonna try to get more of them because the label that put it out, Saturn's Core Audio and Video, or Video and Audio, Saturn's Core, they specialize in shot on video movies. So with this introduction, I'm excited to add more of those because it reminds me. It's like I said, the stuff that you and I used to make back in the day. It reminds me of that, except they're feature length. So it's like
Yeah.
this is somebody else's project that they made with very little means. But again, here I am watching it on a Blu-ray disc. So it's just a really special experience.
Yeah. But I guess we'll introduce our guest who we talked to. Spoilers yesterday, so sorry when the clothes change.
Yes.
But Conall Pendergast. To be honest, guys, he was a really cool guy to talk with. He was really down to earth, really nice. It was awesome learning about his film journey. And dude literally saw an ad at a locally by him that they had basically put the movie out for him. And he just kind of made a movie from there, and the rest has been history. So I'm excited for you guys all to hear his journey and see our reactions. And you got anything else about Connell, Josh, before we send him take a quick break and send him on over?
Well, one thing that I'll mention is that, and I do mention this in that section, is that I watched Kill Them and Eat Them, and then minutes later was on a video call with the guy who wrote and directed it.
He
So
did
it was
indeed do
just
that.
such an odd thing, like that, something like that's never happened to me before. So it was so strange. It was such a weird feeling because when do I get to watch a movie on Blu-ray and then ask questions of the guy who wrote and directed it 20 years ago? You know,
Yeah.
it was so surreal. So yeah, without any further ado, Conall Pendergast, everybody.
Enjoy.
So Justin Decloux, who I knew personally, was starting this new Blu-ray label called Gold Ninja Video, which is still going strong. And I think it was the first release, or it was right at the beginning. He wanted to put out Flesh Freaks and Kill Them and Eat Them. So we did all these supplemental materials. He put out the disc. It was a small run, like 200 discs, and that was it. And I thought, well, okay, great. Like I did these movies years ago, came back, did a small Blu-ray release. It's done. And I was gonna throw away the master tapes because they'd all been damaged in a flood in this apartment I lived
Oh
in years
man.
ago. I was like a basement and like it flooded and the tapes were all wrecked. So I still had them and I was like, why am I keeping these? Like these movies have they came out, they came back and did the Blu-ray, like they're done. And honestly, I think it was that day or maybe the next day I was shopping. I was at the grocery store and I got a text from Ross at Saturn's Core interested in doing like a new release of these movies. So we talked about it, and he actually had me send him the master tapes, even though they were damaged, because there's some system where they can bake these old mini DV tapes, I guess, to get the mold off them or something. And they were able to do that with Kill Them and Eat Them. And I was amazed that they would go to that degree of effort, right? To like actually like restore these movies. Flesh Freaks was too wrecked up, though. They couldn't salvage that for a new transfer, but Kill Them and Eat Them is like off the original mini DV tape.
Oh wow. Do you know any more? You said they like bake it or something to get the mold off?
Yeah, yeah, I might be describing it incorrectly, but he did say they bake it. I don't,
Oh
I guess the
wow.
film probably decays or something, or maybe it, because I say film, sorry, the tape. It's like a physical ribbon of tape, so
Uh-huh.
maybe it just kind of withers over time or something. I don't really know the detail, but they send it someplace that does this process. And yeah, apparently, like it works really well.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I never heard of that. I'll have to, it's just something I want to look into more. That's pretty cool.
Well, those tapes are tiny, right? And no one ever built them to last like 5 years, let alone this length, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this little plastic mechanism with so many little parts that can break. Like the fact that you can get anything off that after all these years is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I noticed that with the transfers of Flesh Freaks and then Kill Them and Eat Them because what they were made 3 years apart. I think it said was Flesh Freaks 2000 and then Kill Them and Eat Them 2003. I believe it said.
Oh, sort of. Kill Them and Eat Them finally came out in 2003. They were actually closer on the heels of each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it took me a while to edit because like I was on such a primitive computer. I mean, advanced for the time, home computer, but you couldn't like edit the whole movie. You could only
Mm.
fit enough footage for like one scene, cut it, output it to a tape, then do the next scene. So
Oh
you
wow.
couldn't, you didn't have a lot of like, it's a terrible way to edit a movie. Like you would never want to do it this way because then you can't easily go back and change things, right? So it took me a long time, especially with Kill Them and Eat Them. It just took me a long time to do it because I was doing it that way. But yeah, Flesh Freaks, when we shot it, I was in high school, and then Kill Them and Eat Them was like the summer of my first year in college. So the couple years apart that we did them.
Okay. So you said that you shot Flesh Freaks on the campus of the University of Toronto. The other sequences in the film that are shot in the jungle, where was that and how long were you there for?
So my parents are archaeologists, and they were running this dig in Belize. And I think my dad either like got me a job or somehow he wrangled like a camera, and my thing to do was to like document the dig. So we had this camera, a Canon Optura. It was like a boxy digital camera. And I was supposed to just like record the dig as part of the thing or something. And I thought, well, if I shoot my own stuff on the side, I could make a movie around it. So I didn't have like a script or anything. I just started making up scenes while we were there and like rigged together like a really basic zombie makeup and shot a bunch of zombie stuff and then wrote the script afterwards and then kind of shot the Toronto stuff around that jungle stuff, which was like a flashback where there was narration so I could explain the connection, between that and the main footage. So, but I looked really different. Like I remember showing it to people at the time and they didn't think it was the same guy because I'd had like short hair in the summer and by the time we were filming Flesh Freaks, it was the winter. And I guess I just looked really different. So the whole point of me being in it was partly to have some kind of connection between the two parts. So they didn't seem too separated. And it
Mm.
didn't even matter because I looked different anyway. So
The this process just has like B movie written all over it. Do you have any like were B movies like big inspirations for you? Like where I guess what decade really inspired you to like horror movies? Like obviously I watched Halloween at a very young age and that kind of inspired me to dive into it. I know Josh is similar, but do you kind of have an era that really inspired you at all?
yeah, when I was younger, I was watching like older stuff because my grandmother and my aunt would watch the classic movie channel like all day long, and my dad would watch especially the 50s monster movies with me. So we used to
Mhm.
like to watch them and then enjoy them, but also make fun of like when there was ridiculous amounts of stock footage or cheesy stuff happened. So I think that was kind of more the inspiration, even though there were a lot of these like shot on video zombie movies. I was under 18, so I couldn't see a lot of them. So I remember
Mm.
looking on the websites and seeing like Ravage and like Sinister and Truth or Dare and all these movies, but I couldn't watch them. So Flesh Freaks was like me kind of guessing at what I thought they were like, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
no way, really?
But it
That's
was
pretty cool.
really, yeah, but it was really, I think, more inspired probably like the 50s movies I watched with my dad. Like part of why I put so much jungle footage was kind of like as a joke because my dad and I would always laugh when we'd watch those old movies where there'd be ridiculous padding or goofy stuff happens. Like at one point, there's a killing where somebody takes like a plastic, like a fan and knocks the front off and shoves it on somebody's face or something. And it's like, obviously that would not slice somebody's skin off, but like you do it as like kind of a joke, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could definitely I could kind of see it when you were talking about getting some footage and then writing around it. I was like, that sounds pretty B movies or 50 monster movie esque for sure.
Yeah, totally, totally. Like one of our favorites we used to watch was King Dinosaur, which if you've ever seen is really funny. The It's like
Look that up.
astronauts go to another planet and the planet is full of like dinosaurs. So it's such a high concept idea, but it's extremely low budget. It's just like four people in a national park with a bunch of stock footage, which I think is great. I love anything where it's like they clearly had no money, but they did the biggest, most elaborate idea ever. I love it.
That was one of the things I noticed about Flesh Freaks and Kill Them and Eat Them was that you could tell that this was a low budget film, but what was made with it, it was like it's a movie I could sit down and watch. It's a feature length film that I sat down, watched, and actually enjoyed. And that was one of the things that blew my mind when I did a little bit more research on it and found out that you were 18 years old when you made it. It's like, me and Tanner, we were making some, what were they usually like 20 minutes? Not
Yeah, 20,
even
20, 30, 30
yeah,
on a good day.
yeah, some of these like just films that we'd shoot in his backyard, and we'd show it to our friends, and we'd all enjoy that a lot. But to have, I guess, just the creative ability to make a feature length film shot on video that not only gets a Blu-ray release, but I could sit down and watch as a film and really enjoy it. I thought that was one of the more impressive parts of the whole release there.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed them. Yeah, I don't remember why it was such a big deal for me to make them like a feature length. I guess it was like I thought, well, they wouldn't get out there otherwise, right? Like it was part of like, okay, if it's a feature, it'll exist, it'll be out there. So, you know.
Did the place in Syracuse, like if it would have been, I don't know, even like 30 minutes long, would they have produced it as well? Am I saying that right? Or
They might have because there were sometimes you'd get like a tape that was maybe some shorts put together or something, but yeah,
Okay.
maybe not. Maybe my idea was like, no, I'm gonna finish this and it's gonna be like straight to video, but it's gonna be like a movie that's out there, you know. And then people thought I was kind of like crazy doing it. Like I remember uh shooting a bit in Belize and somebody saying like, "Oh, what are you gonna do with this movie?" I'm like, "Oh, it's gonna be straight to video." It's like, "Oh, okay, modest ambitions, ha ha ha." It's like, well, no, it did get finished. It did come out,
Yeah.
right?
That's a
Speaking of shorts, I just noticed when I was popping the Blu-ray out again to watch Kill Them and Eat Them that on the bonus features they had a lot of your more recent animations.
Hmm.
And I got to watch. Even I just got home from Pittsburgh, so I didn't have much time right before to finish that film. But I saw that self-actualization of the werewolf woman. What an
Yeah.
interesting cartoon! I mean, and it looked so good. Just
Oh,
even the
thank you.
background, it was an incredible animation. How did you get into stuff like that? And what? How did that specific animation come about?
So I was like trying to get this movie done, and I don't know, you go through this process, like you write a script, you have a lot of meetings, and then, you know, people ask you to do rewrites, and just nothing was happening. And I had like two different projects I could do a few years ago, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do the one that's like an animated film. I'm gonna teach myself to animate and do it, because then at least I'll have something instead of like another, you know, years of like meetings and not making anything. So I did. I did this movie called Dot, um, which was I think it was like 7 or 8 minutes. It was really hard to do because I didn't, you know, have any training in animation, so it was tough to sort of figure it out. Um, and it didn't do too well on its own, but I used it as a piece as like an example of what I could do to get some money for a grant for the next one, the Cyclops Diet, which I think is on the disc too. Um, and then self-actualization, the werewolf one was the one I did after that. And yeah, you know what it was with that one? It was like kind of the pandemic project, right? I was
Mm,
home and I had done all these storyboards for it. And I was trying to figure out how I was going to do this whole movie. And originally my idea was it was going to look more like EC comics, like bold colors and kind of a halftone look, you know. And then I had posted like some of the storyboards I was working on social media, and like a friend of mine asked me for a print of one of the pictures, and somebody else asked me for it as well. I was like, oh, that's a huge compliment. And they like it as it is in black and white. And I was like, whoa, if people like it this way, maybe this would just work better. And then I started it and I was like, oh yeah, this is better. My original idea would not have been as good. Doing it black and white, it like there was a cool sense of depth. And I was like, oh
mm,
yeah, this is, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you just gotta like listen to people. And it's like,
mm.
yeah. And yeah, so I did the whole thing in black and white except for a few scenes. And it was kind of like the thing I worked on, you know, myself in like little increments. And it ended up, yeah, I played at film festivals. It did pretty well. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to looking at the rest of the animations. I'm looking at the back of the Blu-ray here right now. The Cyclops Diet is on there, and it seems
Okay.
like there's so many of these short films. I don't know how many of them are animation and how many of them are live action, but it seems like you have a really good collection of your work, like all on this one Blu-ray set.
Yeah, you know what? They basically like Ross at Saturn Square said like send me whatever you got and we'll put something together. So they were really amenable to doing that. And I was also really lucky that I'd done that previous Blu-ray release with Justin Decloux because he was really gracious and nice and he said, "Yeah, you can just reuse everything." So we just used the commentary that we'd already done from that and an interview from that. So we didn't have to re-record all of that stuff.
Oh, nice. Josh, I'm so glad you brought up the animation because I had a question coming in. So you said you'd never had like animation training or a background. What, I guess, made you want to make some animated shorts? Like what inspired you to do that? Because that's it. I mean, animation's a whole other ball game. That's some incredible stuff. And I was like, how, like what made you want to do that? Learn it all.
Well, I wanted to for a long time. Like I've always like illustrated and like years and years ago, I tried to teach myself like a very old version of Flash and like it was too confusing. But I had access because I work in post-production. I had access to like a full suite of products to do it. And I think when Adobe Character Animator came out, I was like, oh, this seems pretty easy. I can do this.
Mm,
And that's like it's like live capture animation. So you can make a character and then you don't have to animate it frame by frame or even keyframes. You just act to a web camera and the character matches your movements. So it's like, okay,
All
that
right.
seems like doable. And then once I learned that, I realized, well, that's not going to cover me for everything in these movies. I got to learn some other stuff. So I just, I already knew the like After Effects to an extent, and it was just learning like extra stuff and basically going until you were stuck. Look it up on YouTube. Somebody else has figured it out. You know what I mean?
So with some of your early animation work, that from what I've seen in Kill Them and Eat Them, those sequences where you have the what were they called,
Oh,
nanobites,
I
the
haven't seen the movie in so long. I don't remember
yeah,
the
it's
monsters inside the
yeah,
body, right?
yes,
Yeah.
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 So those sequences were animated, and there was a lot of transitions that had an animated aspect to it. Was that your animation? And if so, how did you pull that off?
So, my cousins helped me. They were younger than me, and they helped me set up a tripod in the garage. And we pointed the camera straight down, and I drew the pictures on index cards with like a Sharpie, so you could kind of see through to the next one and kind of do the next frame. And then I think I put pegs or something so I knew where the corners were. And we just would put one index card down, record it, put the next card down, record it, and just do it like that. And then once you brought it into the computer, you would just, make the black red and make the background, take the background out or something like that.
That's incredible. That seems like such a length to go to, but it worked so well for what the film was. It really added a lot to it.
Like looking back on it, I'm surprised it worked at all because that's like the most primitive way I can imagine to like
Yeah.
even try doing something like that. But I don't know, just making it up as I went along, right? So,
And it's stuff like that, like with that primitive aspect to it, that it's like when you have that finished product and what it's so unique because of how primitive it is. Because nobody else is making an animated transition sequence that way, like drawing it on index cards and shooting it with a camera like that. Like it adds. It's like one of those things that makes it even more auteur-esque, if you want to call it that. It added a lot to the film.
thank you. Yeah, I really like stuff that's kind of handmade. Like I'll take a movie that's sort of rough around the edges and is trying something original versus like something really slick. I don't, I like kind of some rough edges in the stuff that I watch. So, I guess I was just sort of doing it that way, right?
Yeah, I had never even heard of, even though I guess it's what me and Tanner were making back in the day. I never knew it was called this, but I never heard of shot on video film before. Like I mean,
Hmm.
I had seen things of that nature, but I didn't know it was like its own class of movie. And I guess that's what Saturn's Core like specializes in. A lot of their releases are SOV type films. Have you seen any of their other releases?
I've seen a couple of them, but I talked to Ross about this when we first spoke, how like a lot of those I knew the cover and I knew like the look of it, but like when it had come out, I couldn't watch them. Like Suspect Video was the place near us that would have had those kind of titles,
Mm-hmm.
but you couldn't be a member unless you were 18. So yeah, I never saw some of those. Like, there's ones later on I went back and watched. But yeah, there were a bunch that I had never seen. I'd have to look at the list though. There's a couple that I've seen on of the Saturn's Core ones, and there's a bunch that like I haven't and hadn't even heard of, like Damn's Elvis and like Lost Faith. There's a couple I want to
Mm-hmm.
check out because I wasn't familiar with them at all.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite aspects of Blu-ray collecting is just seeing a cover, seeing the title. I don't even want to read the description. I don't even want to know what year it's from. Just have the cover sell me, and then I'll see what I get. And this was one of those where I was just it was such a unique experience in terms of what I'm used to that
Mm.
it's those are the kind of things that I'm digging for, like Flesh Freaks, Kill Them and Eat Them. This, I mean, the whole Blu-ray release in general with all the short films and animations, this is exactly the kind of gem I'm trying to unearth when I'm just scrolling on Vinegar Syndrome's website and looking at their partner
Awesome.
labels. And yeah, so I gotta say, thank you for making this all the way back then and making an impact 20 years later. It's really special.
No, I'm glad you liked it. Thank you. Yeah, I remembered in terms of shot on video stuff, I think Ozone was the first one I was able to like rent and check out by J.R. Bookwalter, which I remember really enjoying.
When you turned 18, did you like go crazy on movies like that you just heard about that you wanted to watch? Like that just it kind of sounds like I always wanted Hulu, like weird example. And then when I got Hulu,
Mhm.
I just binged all these shows and movies that they had that I was like, oh, finally. Was that kind of how it was when you were 18? Just went crazy?
Yes, yes, that was 100%. Yeah, as soon as I could get my like suspect video membership, like basically every day after high school, and I arranged my classes so I could leave early. Like I had a spare at the end of the day, and I would go get there right when it was opening, like rent two movies and then bring them back the next day and just do that like every day. It was like so much stuff I had built up that I now have to like get an education in, you know.
What is your favorite horror movie, if you even have one?
I can't pick one. I'd say one that blew me away as a kid was Suspiria. I remember when I saw that on
Oh,
video, I
okay.
was gonna just
Josh, didn't
watch a
we
bit
just
of it
talk
and I
about
was
that?
so into it. Yeah, so that was like one that it's like, whoa, this is like the ultimate European horror movie. Like it's all atmosphere and they took all the stuff that's usually in horror movies with like the characters and maybe a romance subplot and they just cut it and they kept like the whole movie is just the good stuff, you know? That one or like The Beyond, those kinds of films where instead of it being like, oh, maybe there's one cool surreal dream sequence, it's like, no, the whole movie is the cool surreal sequence, you know? I
That's
remember those like really grabbed me.
I just watched The Beyond like 10 days ago. So that's so
Okay,
weird that you
cool.
bring that up. You're talking about the Lucio Fulci film, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, yeah. That's so wild.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was kind of getting the hint that that's how it was because you mentioned a lot in your early career, like wasn't 18, couldn't watch it yet. So I was just kind of guessing. I was like, so what happened when you did turn 18 was what I was starting to think. Um,
Yeah.
when when did you feel like you started getting your stride? Like you really understood how the movie making process worked. And obviously every second it changes. I feel like in the industry there's something new going on. But when did you feel like, man, I kind of have a stride right now in my career?
I don't know. I don't know if I ever did because I think a part of it is like I've always wanted to try new stuff. And so sometimes it's like I think to really if you stick to one thing that's, you know, that's maybe more the way to go. But I'm always interested in trying something new, and I'm always really excited about what I'm doing right now. I always feel like, you know what, I could kick the bucket anytime. So anything I'm doing, I never think of it like, how is this gonna like be a step in my career, or what's it gonna lead to, or what's the
Mm,
next thing? I'm always like, no, this is it. This is the thing. This is all I'm doing. Pretend like this is the last movie I'm ever gonna make, and like really care about it, really approach it with sincerity, and really try to do the best that I can in the thing, and not make something like hoping it'll lead to something else or whatever.
for sure. For sure. I heard your newest short, The Noonday Demon, that's doing pretty
Hmm.
well right now, isn't it? In film festivals?
Yeah, yeah, it's been playing at a lot, which is great. So it's really cool. I went to the Erie Horror Film Festival most recently, which was really, really cool. It was in this classic Warner Theater, which was like an elaborate old movie palace. Like I've never in my life been in such a fancy theater. So it was amazing screening there. It was really cool.
That's awesome. Can you I guess give the fans a little like preview to it, what it's all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a short film, so you can't tell too much
Yeah, I
because you
guess
give the
not too
entire
much.
plot away. But yeah, it's more of like a moody kind of adult drama. There's a guy who he goes to visit like an old flame and he finds out she's got like a kind of horrible secret and it leads to like tragic consequences. Um, so the challenge with that one was kind of doing like something more adult, but also like in an animation vein and how to kind of balance those two things because you don't usually, I think of animation that way. So. Yeah, it's a bit different.
Was an animated feature ever in the cards for you?
Yeah, there's one I want to do, but I don't know if it would be animated or live action. The animation's a lot of work. Like it's
I can
really time
imagine.
consuming.
Yeah,
Part of like with Noonday Demon, I was so overwhelmed by like whether this movie would work or not. I was like, I'm not gonna storyboard it because if I did, I was worried I'd be so like, oh my God, I'm never gonna finish this. So I just started, which is a weird way to do like an animated movie, but it was kind of to trick myself, you know? Because yeah, it's a lot of work. I think I would have to like do some serious prep to do a feature length one because like, you know, it ends up being like years and years. I'd like to, but the next one I want to do is live action.
So speaking of a live action feature, do you have like how far are you in the pre-production process for that? Do you have a title? Do you have an idea or like a working title, I guess? Like where are you in the steps to making that next feature film?
So the next one's called Indoctrination in the Vault of Fire. I've got a script And so the next stage would just be starting like, pre-production and all that. The reason I sort of wanted to do it is that I worked as an actor on several micro budget movies in the last couple of years. And I hadn't been on set in a long time, and I was so impressed by how good a look they could get on like a low budget. Like when I was in film school, right? If you had film lights, they were super hot, and if they fell over, they could like set the place on fire, right? But now it's like an LED, you just plug in and it falls over, and it's like, well, no, who cares? Like as long as the light's fine. So like, I worked on a film called The Daughters of Dunwich, directed by Sebastien Godin, and one called Massacre at Femur Creek by Kyle Heitonen. And both of them, like, they looked so good. And were done on like really modest budgets. And the camera's not even physically that large, but they get a cool lens and put it on. And I was really impressed by what they did with those. So it made me want to jump back and do a live action feature.
Do you have that film in mind that's kind of just in your brain that is your magnum opus? Like if you're going to make your ultimate feature film, this is the idea that you have for it, and this is when you have all the resources at your disposal. Do you have that idea in your mind, or are you still working that out?
I'd say yes. Like I do have other scripts and other movies I want to do and like bigger things I'd want to do, but I generally like really want to focus on whatever I'm doing. So I try to
Mm,
like whenever I get into that mindset, I'm like, well, that's got to be this movie that I'm doing right now is the one, Because I worry
okay.
like, oh, if I think about doing something later, then I'm not going to commit as much. I did one short, which isn't on the disc that I wasn't totally happy with, and that was kind of my mentality. It was like I was told, oh, if you do something like this, it could lead to something like that.
Mm.
And I ended up making something I wasn't happy with, and it was all this work, and like, what's the point, right? So I always try to think like, okay, how do I make whatever I'm doing now that thing that you're talking about, right? Like care
Mhm.
about it enough that like this is the thing.
Yeah. Speaking of making features on a modest budget, have you seen the Terrifier franchise yet? And if you have, what are your thoughts on specifically the first film that was made on, I believe they said $35,000?
Wow, that's really cool. I did not know it was that low budget. I have not seen them. I have like a small child, so I
Oh,
have to
it's
watch
probably hard to
anything
watch that.
scary. Yeah, it's like I have to wait till like super late at night. Um, but yeah, that I didn't know Terrifier was that low budget. I mean it's on my list, but I'm definitely gonna check it out now. That's amazing to do like a 35K movie and then have them become such a big thing.
Yeah, and now the last time I checked, I know the third one, the most recent one, had a $2 million budget, and I believe the last time I checked, it had already eclipsed $32 million at the box office. So to go
Wow.
from a crowd-funded, like extremely low budget film to something that's rivaling big budget Hollywood films at the box office, I mean, it's just something so special. And I have to imagine that for a filmmaker like yourself, seeing where something like that can go at, of such small means to a box office hit, it has to be really inspiring, really exciting.
Oh yeah, it totally is. Any of those, like I guess years ago, like Paranormal Activity or any of those where it's
Mm-hmm.
like a low budget thing, but the concept's really cool, and it becomes like a big thing. No, that's really awesome. I didn't know the first Terrifier was like that low budget of a film, so that's really impressive.
Yeah, I believe it was crowdfunded. I think I read
Wow.
that somewhere. So it just goes to show you. And if you allocate that money in the right spots, you make something that people want to see. I mean, that's all it really takes. As long as people want to see it, you've made
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
How I guess how does budgeting and funding work? Like for your next project you're working on, they have a script for. What is that process going to look like to get it made, essentially?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, it's not gonna, it would be like a micro budget movie, but yeah, I think I'd try and keep it like as small as possible in terms of crew and stuff like that. Like it's limited location. You write with that in mind too, right? It's like
Hmm.
you really write think, okay, like how can I, make this story work so it's like true to the story, but that, either has a small number of people or small number of locations, or you write it so it's something you can actually pull off. So I think a lot of it goes into like working out versions of the script for me where it's like, okay, how do we get this to the point where it's true to itself, but it's doable, So with Indoctrination, The Vault of Fire, there were earlier drafts that were more elaborate, and some parts of it weren't quite working in it. And I felt like, okay, how can I simplify it and make it better? So a lot of that process is there, is like figure it out first before you even start. because writing is the cheapest thing to redo, right? Like easier to rewrite something than like film something again, you know?
Yeah, yeah. How I guess what's you kind of answered one of my questions, just kind of the writing process. What's your director style like? Like if an actor reads a line, do you let them maybe do it a little different a different time, or how's your director style with a set or with a crew, excuse me?
Well, it's nice having options, right? Because with filming, even if you do a few takes it a few different ways, you don't have to figure it out on set and you can sort of
Yeah.
check it out later in post. So it's nice to do that. And also I tend to like you have to adapt it to how like what kind of actor the person is, right? And like are they a person who likes just go in and go full on the first take? Are they somebody who likes to build up? It depends on that too, right?
Mm.
But I do like to sort of do the work, like do the backstory work, right? Like here's where this person's coming from, here's, what's going on, so that if the actor likes to draw upon that, they've got it. But if even if it's not there, I know there's like a basic framework for why somebody's acting a certain way or what's happening, you know? When I worked as an actor, it's the same thing. Like I just, do a lot of script study and really figure out in my head what I'm going to do. And then maybe you change it on the day, but you've got that. You've got like, okay, this is who this guy is. This is why he's feeling this way in this situation. So you've got that kind of skeleton under everything. And then you can play around, but you've always got that to kind of fall back on.
You mentioned earlier that you're a fan of Lucio Fulci films. Are Italian films your favorite foreign film, or is there another country that you see yourself gravitating to in terms of your favorites?
I don't know. I mean, I really do like a lot of the visual aspects of Italian movies, like the way they were shot, like in the 60s, a lot of the Gothic films, the spaghetti westerns. I do really like those a lot. I like, a lot of the like Barbara Steele films. I like Horrible Dr. Hitchcock, the use of color and the sort of extra level they brought it to in terms of being a bit surreal, really appealed to me a lot. But I like movies from all over the world, I like a lot of Japanese movies. They've got a lot of really great, surreal,
Yes.
bizarre
Yeah.
stuff coming out of there too. So,
Yeah, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Those are two of my favorite countries in terms of foreign films. And what my introduction to Italian cinema, it wasn't on purpose. I'm a Blu-ray collector, so I would just,
mhm,
and often, like I said, I would just buy films based on the cover, and I would do no research, and I would get it. And then I'd pop it in, and it's like, oh, this is in Italian. Like, this isn't even in English. But I was like,
mhm,
well, I bought it. I got to watch it. So, and then
mhm,
as time would go on, I'm like, wow, I really enjoy these films. And before I even knew what a Giallo was, I became a Giallo fan. And it wasn't until later I'm like, oh, there's a name for this type of film. Did you have any of like I know you mentioned uh the Beyond. Did you have a favorite like other Giallo film that sticks out?
I'd say like my favorite of it. I mean, I love Black Sabbath, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
isn't Giallo, it's before the Giallo trend, but that was one that like when I saw it as a kid, I was like, there's something different about this movie. Like the atmosphere is so cool. That one had a big, I really liked, big impact on me. And I like Planet of the Vampires and Kill Baby Kill, I think is really good. I really like those gothic ones. Like even when I was like maybe even a little too young to see some of them just because I like the atmosphere so much.
Mm,
The Giallo ones I enjoy too, but I didn't see those till I was older. And I think you're never as affected as much by as the stuff like you see when you're a kid, right?
right. Right. Yeah, I remember the first rated R film I ever saw was The Terminator, and I remember
Okay.
it's the one thing that I cite that really flipped the switch with me in terms of film. I was in first grade and watched The Terminator, and I remember something clicking in my head like, this is unlike anything I've seen before. I'm watching, I'm like, what is this? Like, there's like people dying, and there's like robots, and like what? There's skulls getting crushed. Like, what is this? And I remember that was like it like flipped the switch for me. It's like, whoa, movies can be this. Like it's
Yeah.
not, it. So that's I know what you mean. Where it's like when the things that you watch when you're a kid that maybe you shouldn't have been, but they're the type of things that really flip the switch for you.
And I think like the way you watch stuff now, that really appeals to me too, like just watching something cold,
Mm-hmm.
because you often know so much. Like I remember when I was a kid, to even see a clip from a movie was tough. Like if it didn't show up on like Siskel and Ebert and you didn't see the trailer on TV, you'd have no idea, right? And now you can pretty much know everything about it before you see it. And it's such a cool experience when you can just see something cold. Like a friend recommends something and it's like, okay, let's check it out, right? Like I
Hmm.
saw this Korean horror film, Exuma, a little while ago. A friend of mine wanted to see it. I didn't look anything up, and I think I liked it more because I knew nothing about it.
Hmm.
You talked about you like atmosphere. That was like a big inspiration for you. What's it like create an atmosphere on set? Like obviously you have the vision in your mind, the storyboard. What's it like directing that and organizing, like making a really graphic or atmosphere heavy scene?
Well, when I did one of the shorts on the disc is called Legend of the Seven Bloody Torturers, and it was in black and white, and it's really like stylized, kind of based on some of those older films. And it was really like figuring out what the camera is seeing because we had to fake a lot of things. Like I wanted it in a square aspect ratio, but everything shoots 16:9, so we
Mm-hmm.
had to like mat it and sort of figure out, okay, this is the part of the screen we're using. It shot in color, but made in black and white. But also, whatever we shot with, there wasn't a lens long enough to make it look as flat as I wanted. So we shot from like way across the studio, zoomed in, and then a bunch of the things that were supposed to be like big pieces of torture equipment were like small things in between, out of
Hmm.
focus. So like when you're on set, it just looked really weird. Like you couldn't tell what was going on. Like somebody's standing over here, and then there's like you'd see the modern studio stuff, and then there's like some teeny object, you don't know what it is. So it was all just like on camera. So it got to the point where it was literally me walking up, okay, like I'm gonna put my hands on your shoulders and move you. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. Move over here, stand, don't move. You be there, you know? So it's
Yeah.
very like pictorial, right? It's very like uh it's not apparent while you're shooting what it's gonna look like. And it's all after the fact. Like only the cinematographer and me like behind the monitor can see like, okay, this image makes sense from this exact point of view, but if you move 2 inches, it falls apart, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always curious because sometimes, like when I film things for YouTube channel or just in the editing process, I think, man, I don't know if this is gonna look that great. And then sometimes when you go with your instincts, you're like, yeah, it looks great. Or sometimes when you go more logical, it's like, yeah, I should have just did that in the first place. So I kind of get what you mean, but I've also never been on a set like that, so I had to ask that from someone who's done it. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I always like to kind of go with what you have, right? Like I remember back doing Flesh Freaks, the camera was like a little box-shaped camera, which became more common later, but was kind of unusual.
Hmm.
And everybody was saying like, well, if you want digital to look like film, you can't move the camera. And even as a teenager, I was like, this is never going to look like film. And like the whole cool aspect of having a small but kind of heavy camera is you can move it a lot. Like I'd rather have it look like what it is. It's a cheap movie, who
Hmm.
cares? And do cool stuff with the camera than like halfway fake something else that's going to be boring?
Yeah. Um, what it sounds like, especially on your features, you kind of did it all. You start with the writing process, go all the way through editing. What do you have a favorite? Like for example, for me, editing is easily my favorite of the whole filmmaking process. What do you have a favorite? Is it being on set, the writing, the editing, or
I like being on set. I like being like with a group of people, and I kind of like the challenge sometimes of like, okay, there's no time and you lost the key prop and this thing isn't working and you got to figure it out?
yeah.
Hmm.
But I think also it's because like I work in editing, so I'm on computers all the time. So
Oh
I think that's
yeah,
part
I
of it too.
bet.
It's like I just want to change. You know what I mean?
Oh, I bet. It's like getting out of the house finally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's other people here. Great. You know?
Yeah.
You ever see Evil Ed?
No, I haven't. Is it good?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Okay, I gotta check that out.
It's
Yeah.
a Swedish horror film about a guy who goes crazy because he has to edit all these gore films. So he
Oh,
like he's it's
Yep.
it's an awesome movie.
that sounds right up my alley. I'm gonna check that out. Evil
It's
Ed.
it's on Arrow Video.
Okay.
Yeah, you could probably snag it on Amazon. It's one of those. It's so goofy, like it's a horror comedy, like it's a goofy movie,
Mhm.
but it's super gory. The effects are awesome, and yeah, it does sound like something you'd really enjoy based on what you've told us today, and based on the two features that I saw from you.
So you kind of have the script right for your next feature. What's kind of your next steps now with it?
Well, that's a good question. Like I sort of been busy, all this stuff with New Day Demon getting out to sort
Hmm.
of festivals and things. And so yeah, it's like I guess it's that's the next thing is like figuring out like what's step one. The script is almost there. It needs like a bit of a polish, I think. And then it's just going to be like talking to the right people and setting it up and figuring out. I think a big thing with this one, because it's mostly one location. It's like a guy's in a car accident and wakes up in this garage full of like junk stacked to the sky, and there's a strange sort of CB radio, which is his way of communicating, and he's got to figure out what's going on and why he's at this place.
Huh.
Kind of like Buried meets like a cosmic horror film.
Sounds pretty
So
interesting.
thank you. Yeah. So I think it's like, do we do it in like a studio where we can design it more and have a little more control? Do we try to find like a real place we can use? I think that's the main thing for this movie is the location, because the location is kind of a character too. And then it would be sort of building it around that. I'd probably work, I hope, with a lot of the same people I've worked with on the last few live action films where I worked as an actor, because I had a really good experience on them.
Awesome. So what with shorts, what's kind of the lifespan, I guess, after the film festivals and everything? So New Day Demons getting some pretty good praise. Like what's like the what happens next with shorts? Obviously, I know with features it kind of goes to theaters or maybe right to video or streaming, whatever. What's kind of the process for that with shorts and everything?
That's a good question, because there sometimes there isn't that much. Like,
Hmm.
it can end up on YouTube, right? Where hey, at least people can see it. And in the case of this one, a lot of my shorts are on the Blu-ray, which I'm happy about because they have like a bit more of a life. But yeah, I mean, there's a few people I know where they've had their shorts licensed to be part of either like a program of shorts, or it's like an anthology film that's made up of
Okay,
shorts. So there's some of those like on Tubi and stuff. Um, but yeah, there isn't the same, they don't have the same legs as like a feature. People won't come back to it as much, right? Just because they aren't out there in the same way. So it is nicer like having a feature where like, years later people will come back and be interested in it. Whereas the shorts, I find that's not as much the case.
for sure. Yeah, obviously there's some incredible shorts. I was just curious because yeah, you just don't really hear what happens after.
Mhm.
There's a whole Oscar category for them and everything, but you're like, what? Like, how did people see this? What happened after the
Mhm.
festival? But that's just yeah, really interesting to know.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask, did you draw this?
No, no, I did not. That was some fan art, and I don't know the artist's name. It might be on the Blu-ray someplace, but that I can't take credit for that very cool picture, I'm
Yeah, it is.
afraid.
It is really neat.
Yeah. Ross at Saturn's Core. Either somebody approached him with it or he commissioned it or something, but I
Hmm.
thought, yeah, it was really cool. And the previous Blu-ray cover had a great cover too. It was like a painting by an artist named Andrew Barr of like a gross, bloody zombie ripping its own face off. Which I thought, I mean, that doesn't happen in the movie, but it's a really good poster. It's great. When Flesh Freaks was released on DVD in Japan, it was called Zombie of the Dead. Like there's a Japanese title, and then in English it says Zombie of the Dead. And it's a scene of like a city street with like a zombie in the front and like a helicopter and like a building on fire, and like none of that happens. You know what I mean? I was like, this is a really cool cover, but. And there's a whole like Zombie of the Dead series, but they're all unrelated, like super low budget
Hmm.
zombie movies from the States that then they redid as a series. So Zombie
Okay.
of the Dead 2 or 3 was a movie called Biohazardous by Michael J. Hine, who founded the New York Horror Film Festival. And he didn't know. I said to him, like, like, isn't it cool your film was like is Zombie of the Dead 2? So it's like released as a sequel to Flesh Freaks, even though they're unrelated. And he had no idea his film had been retitled and distributed that way in Japan.
Do you have a favorite Japanese film off the top? Maybe not necessarily number one, but like one that stands out.
Well, I really like Kwaidan. That's like a cool
Ah.
collection of ghost stories, super atmospheric. I mean, there's so many great Japanese films. Like,
Mm.
where do you even start, right? But Kwaidan's really cool. I remember liking that one a lot. And more recently, I watched Kamen Rider Zoe, which they recommended on Bleeding Skull, and that is awesome. I highly recommend it. I think it's on YouTube.
I'm gonna
It's
have to
it's
write that one
great.
down because I've
Yeah,
heard of Qui-Gon. My buddy has Qui-Gon on Blu-ray, and we've been trying to watch it. We never get around to watching it, but we wanted to watch it sometime in October. But yeah, I've heard really good things about that one.
But there's so many good Japanese ones. Like, what did I see recently that was good? Kuroneko is a really good one. Kind of like
Mm.
a ethereal ghost story, really well shot, really atmospheric. I mean, you could go on and on and on, right?
Did you ever see Onibaba?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a
I think that's the
fantastic
same
one.
director as Kuroneko. So if you like that
Oh,
one,
okay.
yeah, check it
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
I was looking at the back here. Oh yeah, that was it. So, how did you pull off the blood and gore effects in Kill Them and Eat Them? Was like the stuff that they were eating out of the bucket, the blood when the hand gets cut off and there's blood squirting out of it. How did you pull all that kind of stuff off?
Okay, so I don't remember. It was on some website. I found this idea of making blood with like water thickened with flour,
Hmm.
Hmm.
which meant it wasn't sticky. Um, it also meant it would rot, but it wasn't sticky. So you had to like cook it in like a big pot, and I'd put it in like an insecticide sprayer when it was cool,
Oh my God.
and then spray it like all over everything. And the thing was, like, if it was on pavement or something, it would just wash away. It wasn't like
Mm.
sticky, so you weren't vandalizing. Because we killed them and eat them. We had no permission to be at that brickworks at all. We
Okay,
just
yeah, that
we
was
just
going to be my
went.
next question. It looked really
Yeah,
cool. It looked
it was
really
like this
cool.
abandoned brickworks, and I think I just happened to like pass it, like my dad was driving me somewhere or something, and then I went there and wrote the whole movie around it. And now it's totally changed. It's this fancy park, right? But back then it was just abandoned. So we just went there and filmed, and yeah, got blood all over the place. But luckily, because it was that flour stuff, it would wash away, right?
Yeah, yeah. What do you remember? What was in the bucket when they were eating the guts?
Yeah, what it was, I'm pretty sure what I would do is I would get liquid latex, dye it red, and you paint it on like glass or something like that, like some
Mm,
kind of surface you can peel it off. And then when you peel it off, it all kind of turns into hunks of stuff. And then you spray
okay.
more blood on that, and it looks just like gross, but it's just plasticky. Like it wasn't there was not actual human organs or anything.
Yeah.
I did do that for one movie, but not that one. So not human organs, not human organs, animal organs. But
Okay.
yeah, and Guts of the Gods, which I think is on the Blu-ray too. The mummy like rips his stomach open at one point, and whatever he's holding, somebody got from a butcher shop. I actually don't even know what the organ
Oh,
is, but he
all
showed
right.
up with
That
something gross and he rips it out of his.
that is on the
Yeah.
Blu-ray, so that will be the next short. The next time I pop the disc in, that'll be the next one I check out. I'll keep that in mind.
Yes. Yeah, kind of slipped up there implying I used actual human organs in one of my films. I did not do that.
I was like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's really whoa, buddy.
Yeah.
That's hardcore. Like,
So, also, what was the inspiration? Because I thought this was the best aspect of the whole film. It made it funny, like the satire of the whole thing. What was the inspiration for The Company, if you
oh
remember?
man, I don't even remember. I don't even know why I made it so it kind of takes place in like some unspecified future because it seems like needlessly complicated. I
It made
don't
the film. I
know.
loved it.
Yeah, you know what? That car they drove was my mom's car, that Checker Marathon. And it's like it was actually, I think, an 81 Checker Marathon, but they never changed the body type, so it looks like a
Mm.
much older car. And I don't know, I think maybe I just like the idea of like these guys driving around in that car hunting down mutants, you know?
Yeah. That was just every time they would say like The Company, like it was.
Yeah.
I was laughing. I mean, there were moments in the film that were legitimately had me laughing out loud. And that those parts in particular were hilarious. Do you remember the guys who played the two men from The Company?
Oh yeah, everybody was really great because I didn't have any money and it was only a couple days, but they really went like all in, which is awesome considering
Mm-hmm.
like now I'm like an adult and the idea of like, some kids making a movie and you're just gonna let yourself get bloody and give a crazy performance. Like I really, really, have a lot to thank them for because they all just went so all in.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like when at the ending when it got gross and there's just blood flying everywhere, like nobody complained.
Yeah, I was really impressed, especially with the masks at the end where you have the two doctors transform and then you have the girl
Mhm.
transform. Those masks, I mean, they looked really well made. Did you make those yourself or did you have somebody else make them?
I made them and then friends of mine painted them. So I had friends who were super into like Warhammer miniatures, like you get these little
Mm,
pewter and they were
Oh
good
yeah.
painters. So they came over and painted the orange one and the blue one, and then I painted the others. I kind of like learned from them how to do it.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I was really inspired by like the Paul Blaisdell monsters from like 50s movies. If you ever seen like It Conquered the World with like the turnip monster, I just thought like I'd rather have something with like personality that is fake than something
hmm.
realistic. So I
Right.
just
Hmm.
went like super over the top within the means we had. And the hair, I went to like a fabric place. Like I remember going and asking the guy, and he was very confused. I was like, like fabric for something that looks like hair, and that I think it's carpeting or something, that white
Mm.
shag stuff. I
Yeah.
just bought
Huh.
a bunch of it, cut it out, stuck it to the back of the mask. It was really hot, and it was like the middle of summer. Like the poor actors, like inside those things. Oh my God.
And what that film, I'm not familiar with Canadian skylines. That skyline, that is Toronto in the background.
Yeah, 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 it is. And like interesting today if you're from here because there's like no buildings and it's like now it's so different. It's so
Huh.
transformed.
Yeah. You said the spot where the abandoned brick place was, that's like a park now?
Yeah, it like several years ago it was turned into like a really nice like the buildings are still there, but it
Oh,
was
okay.
done into like a open park space. They have events there and stuff. So yeah,
You,
it's all fancy. You couldn't just go there and, shoot a monster movie with no
right.
permission. You'd get kicked out, right?
We got to get a plaque put there that says "Kill them and eat them" was filmed here.
There was like I think one caretaker guy who was around sometimes and he was really nice. He didn't
Hmm.
stop us at all. There was one time, they go inside the building briefly and there's like a
Hmm.
shaft of light shining down. We just
Yeah.
went in there because we noticed it was open and shot that and just made up that scene like on the spot. And the
Hmm.
guy came in, he said, "You know what, guys, like you can do whatever you want, but don't go inside these buildings. Like it's not safe." So they
Hmm.
were really, it was nice because he could have just kicked us out and he didn't,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that sounds like a really awesome experience. Yeah, how long was the shoot for Kill Them and Eat Them, and then how long was the Canadian shoot? I know you mentioned the jungle scenes, but how long were those two shoots in terms of like days? I know you said you were doing it on weekends.
Yeah, the Flesh Freaks. It wasn't very many days. I'd say like maybe I don't know. It's like a handful, like probably 5 or 6 altogether. But it spread out over a long time. And some of them, like in those tunnels, it was under our high school, so it was just we'd start after school was done and shoot till late, right? It wasn't much time, but it felt like a long time as a kid because the individual days were spread out. And Kill Them and Eat Them, I think we did like maybe 3 days of all the lab stuff, and then it was like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then the next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was all the brickwork stuff, or
Hmm.
maybe the opposite. But it was only we really went very fast. Like I think it was like 7 or 8 days total, and they weren't even full days. It would like be morning till like just after lunch, kind of.
All
Except
right.
the final stuff was a big long day. I remember that like all the monster stuff, that was like
Hmm.
some marathon day because there's so much monsters bashing the heck out of each other, right?
Yeah. That was a really great ending. I enjoyed, especially, it was kind of a throwback to Flesh Freaks with the one guy getting a rod through its head. It was like,
Yeah.
that's a that's a
Yeah.
Flesh Freaks nod.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
really, really good stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I remember when we recorded the commentary, Justin was like, "Oh, this is a bit of a spoiler, so like skip ahead if you don't want to hear." But Justin was like, "Oh, it's such a downer ending. Like they both turn into monsters." And I was so surprised. I was like, "What do you mean downer? Isn't it? It's great. Who wouldn't want to transform into like a giant orange monster and attack the city? What?" I see it as a very upbeat conclusion myself.
Right. Oh, yes. I'm so glad I remembered. I am so glad I remembered to ask this. At the end of Kill Them and Eat Them, it
Hmm.
says that Dr. Gore will return in The
Oh.
Return of Dr. Gore.
Oh
Yeah.
When
man. Oh.
so are we going to see a return of Dr. Gore?
No, I just meant that as a joke. I
Oh,
thought it was like he'll return in the Return of Doc. I just meant it. I
yeah.
didn't I didn't actually plan a follow-up to the film. Shouldn't have teased what I wasn't gonna do. I remember like we used to sit at the back of our math class and joke about all the sequels to Flesh Freaks, and we had a whole long list of like Flesh Force and Flesh Fury and what would happen over this lengthy series of films. But yeah, they never came about.
Are you still in touch with Dr. Gore?
No, I wish I was. Sandy McDonald was a really nice guy, and we were so lucky to find him because he just totally has that Vincent Price
Right,
energy with the
yeah.
voice. He was so good. When we did the auditions, he I think came in right at the end, and my friend Hugh, who's in the movie, started like laughing, and he was covering his mouth, and like after he said like I'm so sorry, but like Sandy was so perfect. I was just laughing at like I can't believe how lucky you are that this guy walked into the audition. He was great and he actually I think the film played at the Chicago Horror Film Festival and he was going to go and it was when I was in college and I don't know I was super busy and stuff and I remember kind of losing touch with him but I wish I could have sort of gone back and said thank you to all the cast members because they really did a lot on those movies and he was such a find for that film. He was really fantastic. But no, I'm not still in touch with any of them. But yeah, what a lucky find for that movie, eh? He was like
Yeah.
he's just the perfect like Vincent Price, with the voice and everything.
Maybe we could get a return of Dr. Gore in an animated short to cap off
That'd be kind of fun.
the adventures of
Yeah.
him and the girl.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. What was it like auditioning different actors as as a high school or first timer doing it?
I didn't know what I was doing. I remember there was a film co-op where we did it. And I looked at all the audition notices and I contacted everybody I could and was like, look, I've never even seen an audition. I just want to learn how to do it. I'll videotape for you. I'll do whatever. Can I just like be present and I'll
Hmm.
help. I'll do whatever I can. But nobody would even like I think one person got back to me and was like, no, we have somebody to videotape. Like, no. So I just booked a time and like winged it. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, part of why I asked Martin Andre Young was the guy who produced Kill Them, Meet Them, and he really helped me out. He was like a friend of mine I'd met in the first year of college. So he was there and I was there, and we asked Hugh to come, another friend, partly just so there were like three guys. So it looked, we thought, if there's three of us, maybe it looks more like we know what we're doing. But I'd never even like seen an audition being done. So I just
Hmm.
kind of like made it up.
That's too good. I love that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's pretty cool that all your early work and even to this day, it sounds like if you don't know something, you kind of figure it out. And it seems like it's always worked out to make it something better than if you were to just like ask someone else to do it. So I think that's pretty awesome part of your story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's better to ask people. I don't know.
I don't
When you hit the
see.
wall, it's like, hey, you may as well figure it out, just
Yeah,
DIY
then you
it.
got it for next time, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Josh, you got anything?
Well, like I said, I'll think of a few other things later on, but hopefully we get to stay in touch. Hopefully we'll get to see the next feature when it comes out. And yeah, it was really awesome having you. It was such a surreal experience watching a film and then talking to the guy who wrote and directed it just a few minutes later. That's
Yeah.
that's a first.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
No, of course. Thank you. And yeah, let's stay in touch and let us know if you need anything.
Okay, will do. Bye.
All right. Bye.
See you around.